Everyone, welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you joining us today. We're going to break down the events of the May 19th, 2026 North Yarmouth joint meeting between the Select Board and the Budget Committee. You know, if you love seeing how the gears of local government actually turn, you're going to find this one incredibly fascinating. We'll be looking closely at the FY27 budget, where these two different committees found some immense common ground, but then hit a massive wall of deep philosophical contention.
To really set the scene here, you kind of have to appreciate the relatable, everyday reality of local government. This meeting actually kicked off with an entire hour of audiovisual technical difficulties. The live stream was totally down, the video wasn't working, and as one official put it, there is no way for us to postpone this meeting. They've been diligently trying to fix it for the last hour. Basically, they were at the legal drop-dead date to approve the town meeting warrants, so they had absolutely no choice but to just press on. They proceeded with a single audio-only recording captured by the town manager, Diane. It's a perfect reminder that municipal work happens in the real world, tech glitches, and the whole shebang.
Okay, let's look at our roadmap for today's explainer. We're starting with the swift consensus reached on the core budget, making the turn to Article 23, diving into the payout data, exploring the fiscal prudence of the Budget Committee, the community investment goals of the Select Board, and finally, the final vote.
Section 1. Swift consensus on the core municipal items. Let's start right at the foundation.
When we talk about local government, we naturally tend to focus on the arguments, right? But what's truly remarkable about this joint session is how incredibly fast they move through the bulk of the town's operations. We're talking about millions of dollars passing without a hitch. Over $1 million for public works, nearly $1 million for public safety, hundreds of thousands for the community center and solid waste. The Select Board and the Budget Committee agreed unanimously on almost every single foundational item. It perfectly showcases that for about 90% of local government work, there is complete, unified dedication to just keeping the town running smoothly. But then, of course, they reach that remaining 10%.
Section 2, the turn to Article 23. And here's where we need to pump the brakes. That rapid-fire agreement came to a sudden grinding halt.
We have a really stark discrepancy here. For Article 23, the Select Board initially proposed a placeholder request of $50,000. The Budget Committee, on the other hand, brought a firm, unyielding recommendation, $0. Literally no new additional funding. That's a massive gap in expectations. And to understand why they were so far apart, we really have to understand the rule changes driving this specific article.
So what exactly is Article 23? Well, it's the funding mechanism for the Senior Property Tax Assistance Reserve. North Yarmouth has been actively reworking their local ordinance to align it directly with the state's property tax fairness credit. The whole idea is to make applying easier for residents so they don't have to jump through multiple administrative hoops. But by aligning with the state program, the income eligibility cap shoots way up, from $60,000 to over $100,000. Suddenly, a much larger pool of residents, specifically those aged 70 and up, are eligible for town assistance.
Section 3, the payout data. This brings us to the numbers that anchor the entire debate.
You simply can't understand the tension in that room without looking closely at the data they were grappling with. Historically, the town actually only paid out about $14,300 in actual benefits. And because of those historically low payouts, they've actually built up a pretty healthy existing reserve piggy bank of $55,000. But under the new, state-aligned criteria, with that higher income cap we just talked about, the projected need for eligible seniors could skyrocket to over $82,400. So you have a historically small program suddenly looking at a massive 8-fold increase in potential demand.
Section 4. Fiscal Prudence and the Budget Committee.
Faced with those wild projections, the Budget Committee predictably planted their flag on the side of extreme fiscal caution. They argued that there is simply way too many unknown variables with this newly expanded ordinance to start throwing tens of thousands of new tax dollars at it. One member voiced a very real, heavy fear, pointing to a past mistake actually made by the state. The state once offered a super-rich senior tax relief program, realized it was totally financially unsustainable, and then abruptly repealed it. The committee's absolute nightmare scenario is funding the town program too aggressively right out of the gate. As they explained, if you pay a benefit and then next year say, oh wow, we're going to have to back it down, I don't want to have to do a back down with people. They dreaded getting vulnerable residents used to a high level of support, draining the account, and then painfully retracting that benefit later on. To put this all into perspective, you have to zoom out to the broader fiscal picture of the town.
The Budget Committee noted that the current $55,000 reserve is already 4 times richer than what they paid out all of last year. Plus, the town's capital reserves, think essential stuff like paving and equipment, are already underfunded by about $400,000 a year. They argued, absolutely in good faith, that every extra dollar added to this reserve comes directly out of another taxpayer's pocket. Their final recommendation? Let's just use the existing $55,000 to safely test the waters of the new system for a year before aggressively committing any more funds.
Section 5. Community Investment and the Select Board.
On the other side of the table, the Select Board presented an equally passionate argument, but their focus was firmly fixed on immediate community investment and long-term planning. For the Select Board, timing was everything. Because the overall municipal budget being presented was relatively lean this year, they argued, we're presenting a fairly lean municipal budget. This is a good time to take some money and to invest it in that account to put us in a position for the future. Whether it was the original $50,000 or a compromise of $27,000, they firmly believed pre-funding the account prevents a massive financial shock next year. If that projected $82,000 need actually becomes a reality, front-loading the cash now ensures they won't have to scramble and drastically raise taxes later just to honor their commitment to struggling seniors.
So it all boils down to 2 perfectly valid but totally competing philosophies. On one side, the Budget Committee used the existing $55K to safely test the new rules before overcommitting town funds. On the other, the Select Board front-load the reserve right now during a lean budget year to guarantee future resident support and avoid a future tax spike. It is a classic, deeply relatable local governance debate, balancing strict caution against proactive investment.
Section 6. The final vote. The clock was ticking. They were at the drop-dead date for the town warrant, so they literally couldn't leave the room in a stalemate.
The gridlock had to be broken, and here's exactly how it played out. First, the Select Board slowly acknowledged the validity of the Budget Committee's point that the $55,000 already sitting in the reserve is a substantial amount to test the expanded program in its first year. Realizing the firm resistance to new funding, a motion was actually made to eliminate Article 23 from the current warrant entirely. It went to a vote and passed 3-2. This effectively set the new funding at $0, allowing the new tax assistance ordinance to move forward utilizing only the existing reserve pool.
And that brings us to the end of this explainer. But I want to leave you with a really profound question to ponder. In local government, how do you balance the immediate needs of struggling residents with long-term fiscal caution? North Yarmouth tackled it by compromising, relying on past savings to fund future promises, at least for now. I really hope this deep dive helped clarify exactly how these complex, incredibly human municipal decisions are made. Keep learning, stay curious, and I will see you in the next explainer.